All right, very well. So we give praise, esteem, and honor to the Most High Yahuwah. In the name of Yahushua HaMashiach this day. Let's just be alive to see another one. Let's pick it up in John chapter 5 and verse 39. Search the scriptures, for in them you think you have eternal life, and there they which testify of me. And you will not come to me that you might have life. I receive not honor from men. Excuse me. But over again. So search the scriptures, for in them you think you have eternal life, and there they which testify of me. And you will not come to me that you might have life. I receive not honor from men, but I know you, that you have not the love of Elohim in you. I come in my Abba's name, and you receive me not. But another shall come in his own name, him you will receive. How can you believe, receive honor one of another, and seek not the honor that comes from Elohim only? Do not think that I will accuse you. The Abba, there is one that accused you, even Moses, of whom you trust. For had you believed Moses, you would have believed me, for he wrote of me. Believe not his writings. How shall you believe my words? Psalms 1. So we're going to continue dealing with conforming. We're going to hear a lot of different things when it comes to that. I've seen a couple things just had me thinking. We'll see if we'll be able to use those things, if they'll be relevant or what, or we have to discuss this evening. Psalms 144. Rid me and deliver me from the hand of strange children, whose mouth speak vanity, and their right hand is the right hand of falsehood, that our sons may be as plants grown up in their youth, that our daughters may store, that our sheep may bring forth thousands and 10,000s in our streets, that our oxen may be strong to labor, that there be no breaking in or going out, and that there be no complaining in our streets. Baruch is that people that is in such a case. Baruch is that people whose Elohim is Yahuwah. Let me just grab something real quick. Notice that it mentioned about complaining. Give me a moment. That there be no complaining in our streets. And why would that be important? That word for complaining is an outcry. I think I mentioned it. I just want to see where it's used at. That's not the Hebrew word that I'm thinking about used for murmuring and complaining. I think it's just murmuring. But come to Philippians chapter 2. We pick it up at 2 and 5. I work my way down. Quiet, please. Quiet, please. Now you're being disrespectful. Now you're being disrespectful. That means be quiet. Close the book. Be quiet. It's not time for that. Let this mind be in you, which was also in the Mashiach Yahushua, who being in the form of Elohim, thought it not robbery to be equal with Elohim, but made himself of no reputation, and took upon him the form of a servant, and was made in the likeness of men. And being found in the fashion of a man, he humbled himself, and became obedient unto death, even the death of the stake. So, wherefore Elohim also highly exalted him, and given a name which is above every name, that the name of Yahushua every knee should bow, the things in heaven, the things in the earth, and the things under the earth, and every tongue that confess that Yahushua HaMashiach is Lord, to the esteem of Elohim. Now we mentioned some of that in regards to getting on the stake, but notice that he said not that, but he made himself of no reputation and took upon him the form of a servant. Let's take a look at that again. In fact, let's go back to 1 Corinthians chapter 11, please. Back to 1 Corinthians chapter 11. From 1 Corinthians chapter 11, back to Matthew chapter 20. So it said he took upon him the form of a servant. And I'll mention this here, and I probably won't go into that great of a detail because it just caused me to think about it because of what we're dealing with. But a brother I know, he had posted something like, he said, I like to have deep talks so I can know what made you become a hoe. This caused the domino effect of numerous women being highly upset at his thought process. But his thought process was one of the thought process of not shaming the woman for being a whore, but for you knowing what you get yourself into. It ain't even just the tap of just being a whore. How did you arrive at the mindset that you presently have? Why do you think the way that you presently think, which has dictated the actions that you presently make? What led you to make this choice and that choice and that choice? Most of the people who responded were just looking for justification and rationalization for continuing a pattern of making negative choices, which will have a deleterious effect on the outcome of your existence. See, the thing that most people, and it's a shame, but these supposed to be people who say they serve Yahuwah. Now, of course, the book said, who can have compassion for those who are ignorant and out of the way? But being ignorant and out of the way means that you don't know about Yahuwah. Of course, you know, according to the law in the book of Leviticus, that there is a sacrifice for the law of for ignorance, for transgressions that are of ignorance. This is one of the reasons why Yahushua say, Abba, forgive them, they know not what they do. Because if they would have known, they wouldn't have killed the Prince of Esteem, as Paul wrote to the synagogue and the assembly in Corinth. So you don't know what you don't know. But at the same token, you do know why you're making the choices and decisions that you're making. And then you're looking to want to be joined to someone. And you don't want to sit back and have the self-awareness. Because that's really what that question is about. It's self-awareness. You're aware of who you are and why you chose to do the things that you chose to do. Because if you're not aware, then how stop it? You know better. She's a baby. She can't function in that fashion. But you have self-control. You don't have to join in with her. So think about that, right? That's what I told you the other day. When you look at committing sin, that is a choice. So you have to be aware what causes you to choose to sin. See, you can't sit back and say, oh, my parents did this and my parents did that, or this happened to me, or that happened to me. Because who don't want to hear that? And I know that might not make people feel good on the inside and this, that, and the third. That is what it is. Because I'm here to tell you, you go in front of that throne, that man opening up the books, he don't care about none of that. You know what he care about? Did you do what I told you to do? And if you didn't do what I tell you to do, I don't care why you didn't do it. I don't care why you didn't do it. And see, nobody wants to hear that. See, at the end of the day, Yahuwah, I'll get to it in a moment. 1 Corinthians 11 and 1. 1 Corinthians 11 and 1. Hold on 1 second now. First Corinthians 11 and 1. Be you followers of me, even as also I am. Be you followers of me, even as I also am of Hamashiach. Now I praise you, brethren, that you remembering me in all things and keep the ordinances as I delivered them to you. But I would have you to know that the head of every man is Hamashiach, and the head of the woman is the man, and the head of Hamashiach is Elohim. So we're looking at Sunday. Of course, you know, let's go back to Genesis chapter 3 and then to Luke chapter 12, verse 48. We'll get to Matthew 20 in a moment. Let's just return back. Because if we're dealing with conforming to the image, the first person that has to conform is the man. That's the first person that has to conform. Because at the end of the day, matter of fact, before we even go to that, go to Genesis chapter 2. We got to look at the first person, whoever taught in the flesh. Who's the first person he ever taught in the flesh? It would be the man. So after that, we'll swing to 1 Timothy chapter 2 after this Genesis chapter 3. And from 1 Timothy chapter 2, then we'll get Luke chapter 12, verse 40, about 44. And then from there, Matthew chapter 20. we're good in 1 Corinthians 11, and we still hold in Philippians chapter 2, because we have to look at being formed in the fashion of a servant and humbling yourself unto death. This is one of the first instances, and we kind of discussed that a bit on Wednesday, about conforming to that image, being made in the likeness of his death, that you can be raised in the likeness of his resurrection. So in order to do that, you have to come in the likeness of a servant. Genesis chapter 2, verse 15. Genesis 2, by verse 15. And Yahuwah Elohim took the man and put him into the Garden of Eden to dress it and to keep it. So let's pause. And let's look at dress and keep, just definition wise. Let's just look at it. Bring it to your remembrance. So, of course, you know, to dress is a vibe, which is for you to work or you to do your labor. And, of course, keep is to guard, which is the word shamar. So you're supposed to work and you're supposed to guard this garden. Or what is this garden? Well, if you recall, it's the paradise of Elohim, according to the word of Yahushua in Revelation chapter 2. So you're supposed to work and guard the kingdom, if you will. Work and guard the paradise of Elohim. This is a man's first duty. So for you to be a servant, because remember, who created that garden? Who made that garden for man? And the first thing that he told him to do is you need to minister or to serve. You need to labor and you need to guard it. You know what I'm saying? So you have to look at that as a man. If we're going to be in the fashion of, if we're going to sit back and look at it and tell this woman, I'm your head like a Mashiach, and you're supposed to honor me like you honor the Lord, then you have to be able to understand your duty is to labor and to guard and to keep or to protect. So when you understand that, what are you guarding, keeping, and protecting? You're guarding and keeping and protecting of the way you are. Because what was in the midst of the garden was the tree of life. So you're supposed to be keeping and guarding the way you are in the household. We kind of talk about that. But Yahushua something new to a certain extent with the flood. The other side of the flood, if you will. So there has to be an understanding. So when it comes to understanding, and of course we know this, we'll get to it in a minute. You have to have the, just let me, because I'm going to get ahead of myself before we read it. Let's continue. Yahuwah Elohim commanded the man, saying, of every tree of the garden you may freely eat, but the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat of it. For in the day that you eat thereof, you shall surely die. And Yahuwah said, it is not good that man should be alone. I will make a help meet for him. So then he says, I'll make someone to aid and assist you. Now, of course, we know from Genesis chapter 3 that she ran back down to the adversary everything that had been said to Adam. So he took the time to teach her. So you have to sit back and look at something. Why do we have to look at it in this regard? This woman was taken from the man she knew absolutely nothing at all. In order for her to function in the fashion that she was supposed to function in, this man had to have the patience and the wherewithal to instruct her. Now, this is in the same lines of what the Lord did for us. And if we're saying we in that image, then as a man, you have to have that same ability. You cannot expect someone to do something and you have not properly trained and instructed them in that task. If you think in that fashion, they are going to fail. This is, if you recall, we read in Isaiah chapter 30, he said, your teachers won't be removed in corners anymore, but your eyes shall see your teacher. What did he tell you? That he gave some apostles, some prophets, some pastors, some evangelists, some teachers for the edifying or the instructions of the body. There's no way that Yahuwah can hold you accountable for what you're supposed to do if he hadn't set up a framework and a system for you to be taught how to do it. So you can't get upset with somebody for not knowing what to do if it was your responsibility to train them how to do it. Nevertheless, 1 Timothy chapter 2. And this 1 Timothy chapter 2 will accentuate the point of which I speak. And make sure that's the right place. And it is. 1 Timothy chapter 2. I'm picking up at verse 4. I surmise 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 4. He say, who will have all men to be saved and come into the knowledge of the truth. For there's one Elohim, one mediator between Elohim and men, the man Yahushua HaMashiach, who gave himself for a ransom for all to be testified in due time. Whereunto I am ordained a preacher and an apostle. I speak the truth of the Mashiach and lie not, the teacher of the Gentiles in faith and verity. I will therefore that men pray everywhere, lifting up Kadash hands without wrath and doubting. And we've dealt with that in times past. And you know that's what the Lord did. You can read in Isaiah 65:1, I stretch out my hands all the day to a gainsaying people who go after their own way. Yahushua was stretched out on the tree, hands out, praying without wrath, no doubting. He said, Abba, into your hands I commend my ruach. He said, Abba, forgive them. They know not what they do. You have to sit back and understand that. This is what I'm telling gentlemen, I know, and I told y'all this before. Some people see, if you want to be able to assist someone, and I was telling somebody else this other day, some people don't seek for solutions for problems, they seek to complain. When you seek to find a solution to your problem, life is a lot easier. It'll be a lot smoother. You find yourself in a more peaceful, joyous, or at times in a state of happiness than if you don't seek to solve your problems. Because those problems ain't gonna do nothing but manifest, and they'll definitely have a negative effect on your mental state. You know what I'm saying? Most people don't seek to do that. So when you look at Yahushua understood and knew, but what I meant is because he said, who can have compassion on those that are ignorant and out of the way? You can't have compassion on people unless you seek to understand why they think the way they think and get them to that point. That doesn't mean that you justify conduct. See, that's how most people's minds are thought, because you think emotionally. So you think because someone is thinking to understand conduct, and they're thinking to understand conduct for the means to assist the individual to no longer participate in detrimental conduct. You know what I'm saying? Most of us have not been trained to think in that fashion. You think, you're just, ain't nobody justifying anything. It's the reason why people look at it as justification, because you have no care if this person is healed and that their conduct is no longer detrimental to themselves, which is the point of finding out, why is this woman a whore? What caused her to commit such conduct? Slow, bro. What caused her to do that? Because if you can find out what caused her to do that, then you can maybe give her the solutions to where she would no longer view or conduct herself in that fashion. If a young man is detrimental to his community by the means of selling narcotics or going through robbing, stealing, whatever it is that he might do, you have to understand what got you to that point to think that this was an acceptable way to conduct yourself. I was in the gym the other day, and we didn't talk about this before. An older gentleman was talking to another older gentleman, because somebody had got killed right by the gym. You know what I'm saying? He was like, a lot of these young boys raised by women, so they're emotional. They don't have conflict resolution skills. They don't have the ability to resolve differing points of view without resorting to violence of some nature, whether it be gunplay or physical altercations. You have to look at yourself as a man, that if you can't resolve conflict without the thought or inkling of getting violent, there's something wrong with you. That's not the proper way a man should be able to conduct himself. So every time you run across a different point of view, you get angry to the point that you want to become physically violent. And you think that's an acceptable way of thinking? But because you're not accustomed to someone asking you questions to get to the root of where does that thought process come from? What got you to that point? I'm not justifying you getting to that point. I'm trying to understand how you got there. Because I can't assist you unless I know the roadmap that got you to the destination that you're presently at. Maybe that way you can get off on the next exit and no longer dwell in that town. But that's because the average person doesn't care. Also, the average person also is not self-aware and nor likes to have accountability for deleterious thought processes and actions. So I'd rather not discuss that or deal with that, because that makes me uncomfortable. Because now I have to face the aspects of myself that I don't want to look at. And the point of what I've been, those conversations for me was to express to y'all is the ability to be self-aware. Not come up with reasons and justifications for why people do this, that, there, and the third, because that's neither here nor there. You have to be self-aware of. You know what I'm saying? Because there are women and people been molested, and they very well may have been. And I know quite a few women who have been molested. You know what I'm saying? But once you get to a certain age, you can't use molestation for excuse for being a whore. You can't be 37 years old and still running off of that. You can't do that. See, we do that, and that allows people to wallow in victimhood. You can't wallow in being a victim. There's no strength in being a victim. There's compassion to victims. There's mercy to victims. There's understanding towards victims. But you can't become strong wallowing in victimhood. Can't do it. You can't do it. That's why our people are in the position that we're in as a whole, because we wallow in being a victim. And in reality, you're not even a victim. I'm talking about our people. You're not even a victim. You created the situation and circumstance that you find yourself presently in. You created that from your choices. From your choices. That's the biggest problem. You see men doing it all the time. I done told y'all this before. I told my homeboy this other day. He called me. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that. I never, as long as I live, listening to that nigga in that horseshoe talking about God got us here. I ain't know nothing about no word. Look that man dead in his face. Stop lying on that man. That man ain't got us here, my nigga. I say, boy, when I ain't sell no dope, boy, I ain't get locked up. And then I went back to selling dope. And I'm in here talking to you, cuz. So that's me. My decision making is why I'm sitting here shackled up having this asinine conversation with you. You know what I'm saying? So the ability to see what you do. See, we want to look at things in this aspect. This person did this and this person did that. This person said this, and that's why I did that. That's the coward's way out. I don't care what nobody else said. I don't care what nobody else did. That did not necessitate me making that choice. I can remember being in prison having that conversation. I said, yeah, we know the government put the dope on the street. You know, because brother, like, you know, we don't have no choice. But I'm like, we do have choices. This is the choice that we made. Now, since this is the choice that we made, we have to deal with the consequences of that decision. You can't go around blaming people for decisions that you made. Even if your choices were limited, you still had a choice to make. You have to accept that. And when you can accept the choices that you made, then you can be self-aware, and then bad decisions won't eat you alive. Most people get ate alive and because they dwelling on things from 10, 15, 20 years ago. I don't sit back and dwell on the decision that was made for me going to prison. It had already been made. Sat back, learned from it. This is what derived from it. Boom, boom, move on with your life. Period. I can't sit back and I spent all these years sinning. I already knew that when the gospel came. You can't dwell on that because there's no progress in that. There's no strength in that. It's only weakness. You should just focus on that, and it will suffocate you so there's no life left in you. But let's continue. Verse 9 of 1 Timothy chapter 2. In like manner also that women adorn themselves in modest apparel with shamefacedness and sobriety, not with broidered hair or gold or pearls or costly array, but which women professing godliness with good words. So you have to keep that in mind. If you profess that you're a set-apart woman and you godly, you need to make sure that your attire is modest. Stop worrying about being cute. Stop worrying, because what does that do for you? That don't do nothing for you. That's just for your vainness and your pride. That don't mean that you can't look nice, but if you focus on certain things, you have to sit back and look at it. And somebody look at you and say, that is a set-apart woman. Don't nobody want to see your legs. Don't nobody want to see your titties. Don't nobody need to see that but your husband. And if you feel the need for your body parts to be seen, then you're a woman professing godliness, but whose heart is the heart of a whore. Because there's not a single modest, godly woman in this book that had a desire to be seen. She only wanted to be seen by her husband. And if that offends you, take it up with the Lord, because you ought to adjust the way that you think. I ain't got nothing to do with that. That stuff's not acceptable. You know what I'm saying? That stuff's not acceptable. And then we as men, you look at it, you don't care what your wife look at. You don't care if she advertises. And that's coming from living in this society. Whores advertise. And if you a wife, what you advertising for? What you running ads for? Who you marketing to? Who you trying to get to purchase what you selling? Think about that. Nevertheless, verse 11. Let the woman learn in silence with all subjection. But I suffer not a woman to teach, nor to usurp authority over the man, but to be in silence. For Adam was first formed, then Eve. And Adam was not deceived, but the woman being deceived was in the transgression. How are you able to transgress? You have to rebel. In order to rebel, you have to be taught. See, a man can't say his woman's rebelling and she ain't been taught nothing. If she ain't been taught nothing, what is she rebelling against? She's just operating in the nature of what she presently has at the time. You can't blame her for that. You got to blame yourself for that if you ain't taught her nothing. Now, if you taught her something, then she would be in the transgression, like it just said. Say Eve was in a transgression. We know that he gave the commandment to Adam. How do you think Eve got it? Eve wasn't formed when that commandment was given. She got it from her husband, like she's supposed to. That's why I mentioned that last week. A woman should be able to get wisdom and counsel and understanding from her husband. And if she can't get that from you, then what purpose do you serve? That doesn't mean you have to be an all-encompassing scriptural savant, but you do have to have the ability to know how to solve problems and handle issues, or be resourceful enough to have a network of people who can assist if you get at anything, a network of people that they can be able to help you out if a problem arises. Because some people think, no, a man's your husband is not going to be Mr. Fix It, the auto mechanic, the house man. No, but he can have people in his network. That's what happens. Everybody don't do the same thing. If you look in our culture, everybody didn't have the same trades. Everybody didn't do the same thing. You know that Yahushua was a carpenter. That means his father was a carpenter. So if Peter was a fisherman, that means his father was a fisherman. You think when it comes on the natural level of doing trade, you think Peter knew how to be a carpenter? You would go ahead and holler at the people who that's what they people did. That's common sense. But that's another conversation, because the network of people that you have can help you get further along in life and get things accomplished. Because let's just accept the reality, gentlemen. You're not going to know how to do everything. You're just not. And I was talking to another brother about this thing, and you have to look at your wife needs to look at you with a sense of inspiration and admiration. So you have to look at yourself and what you're doing with yourself. Is your wife inspired by you? Shalom, man. Is your wife inspired by you? You know what I'm saying? Does she have a level of admiration? We didn't talk about that before. Does she admire you? So that's a whole another way of thinking. But let's go back to Luke chapter 12, verse 44.
Hey, sit down before you go to bed. Water on my sofa.
I bet you will. Luke 12 and 42. Luke 12, 42. Make it 41. Ain't gonna hurt. We got Matthew 20 and then back to Philippians chapter 2. The Lord said, who them is a faithful and wise. I'm sorry. Hey. Quiet. I didn't ask. I didn't ask. I didn't ask. I'm not playing with you, cuz you see a smile on my face. I just said be quiet. I didn't need any rebuttals, explanations, excuses, or anything of the sort. Thank you, sir. Luke 12 and 41. And Peter said unto him, Lord, speak you this parable unto us, or even to all? And the Lord said, who then is that faithful and wise steward, whom is his Lord shall make ruler over his household, give them the portion of meat in due season? Baruch is that servant whom his Lord, when he come, shall find so doing. Of a truth I say unto you, that he will make him ruler over all that he hath. But and if that servant say in his heart, my Lord delay his coming, shall begin to beat his men servants, maidens, and to eat and drink and to be drunken. The Lord of that servant will come in a day when he look not for him, and at an hour when he is not aware, and will cut him asunder, and will appoint him his portion with the unbelievers. And that servant which knew his Lord's will, and prepared not himself, neither did according to his will, shall be beaten with many stripes. But he that knew not, and did commit things worthy of stripe, shall be beaten with a few stripes. For unto whomsoever much is given, of him shall much be required, and to whom men have committed much, of him will they ask the more. So, and we know what that is. That's just simply dealing with the simple factor of what? That heavy is the head that wears the crown, if you will, or with great power comes great responsibility. So when you look at this here, if you're a steward of a household, then there's great, because much was given unto you. So much is going to be required from you. Let's look at this here. And the Greek word for required. Let's see what they have. And this is going back again. This is what the Lord is saying about his servant. And accord much was given to him. So we're also going to see that what was required of him. And what was required of him was for him to humble himself in the fashion of a servant and become obedient even unto death. We'll get required. See what this Greek word is. That Greek word for required is zato. And it is to seek in order to find, to seek a thing, to seek in order to find out, to aim for, to aim at, strive after, to require or demand. Crave, demand something from someone. So when they look at require, there's a demand from you. Who is demanding something from you. We'll look at committed much also. That word for committed is parathemi. It has a few definitions. To set before one in teaching, to set forth oneself, to explain, to place beside or near. But it also means to commit to one's charge. So to whom much is given, much is required. And who men have committed much, of him will they ask the more. So let's look at something in that regard. I think it's Colossians chapter 4. I said, this is, like I said, man, this is in regard to what these, because these women were going hard, man. You know what I'm saying? They were going hard. And the only positive from it was that the men that were speaking to the women was like, why are y'all upset? Because we saying that we are requiring more from you than what we're getting. That this is completely unacceptable. Which is in reality, that's how we're supposed to act and how we're supposed to speak. You're supposed to tell them, oh, put your clothes on and stop being a slut. You know what I'm saying? But see, that sounds harsh, but at the end of the day, that's what it is. That's what it is. Stop being a whore. You know what I'm saying? Put your clothes on. Make that Colossians 3:18. Put your clothes on. Stop being a slut. Stop opening your legs for every man that pass by. Stop having children with random men. Stop being disrespectful. Start using your brain. Stop being repugnant and just completely disagreeable. Because you have to stop tolerating it. We're talking about repugnant behavior. Colossians 3:18. Wives, submit yourselves unto your own husband as it is fit in the Lord. Husband, love your wives and be not bitter against them. Children, obey your parents in all things, for this is well pleasing unto the Lord. Fathers, provoke not your children to anger, lest they be discouraged. Now let's look at some of the Greek words for those as well. I think we can talk about this, but it's been a while. First thing first is we want to look at being bitter. The definition for bitter. That word is pikrino, and it basically means to grieve, to be embittered, to be irritated. Now let's look at something right, just in a different fashion of not being bitter, because it's not going to be profitable for you to do this. Hold this Colossians 3, not right now, man. Hebrews, the Epistle of Hebrews, chapter 12.
Oh, 6.
So I'm in the right spot. That's chapter 13, my correction. Verse 13. There we go. Hebrews 13. Verse 12, I surmise. Hebrews 13 and 12. Wherefore Yahushua also, that he might sanctify the people with his own blood, suffered without the gate. So again, you see the humbling, service, what was committed to him. Well, let's let me pray this way. What was given to him was the everlasting kingdom. We already know this. Because we talked about this when we were looking at Songs of Solomon chapter 8 a few weeks back. This man was given an everlasting dominion. So of course, much was going to be required from him in order for him to attain that. And because Yahuwah committed much to him, more was going to be demanded from him. This is why more is demanded from the man than it is from the woman. You can't demand too much of anything from her. Because what is she going to do? She was created, we already read the verse in Genesis. She was created to be a helpmeet, so you wouldn't be alone. You know what I'm saying? So what is Yahuwah going to demand from her? His only demand for her is to serve her husband is unto the Lord. So because this has been given unto you or committed to you, then much more is going to be required from you.
Hey,
Nevertheless.
hey, I'm sitting down now.
Let us there, this is verse 13. Let us go forth therefore unto him without the camp, bearing his reproach. We have no continuing city, but we seek one to come. By him, therefore, let us offer the sacrifice of praise to Elohim continually. That is the fruit of our lips, giving thanks to his name. But to do good and to communicate, forget not, for with such sacrifices Elohim is well pleased. Obey them that have the rule over you. I didn't read that verse in Genesis chapter 3, but remember to say that, and the man will rule over you. Now, again, he's referring to those who have rule over you in the body. But those men who have rule over you in the body is no more symbolic of Yahushua over his body, which is symbolic of the man over his. That's why we read 1 Corinthians 11. So when you look at those who are part of that body, he said, obey them that have rule over you and submit yourself, for they that watch for your souls, as they must give account, that they may do it with joy and not with grief, for it is unprofitable for you. So we have to sit back and look at that. When we don't want to submit ourselves and obey them that have the rule, it doesn't end up being profitable for that individual who's being ruled over. Remember, that's why we read that he that rule over men must be just. We have to do things righteously. So you can't seek rule and then someone's not submitting and obeying and you're ruling unjustly. You can't do that. You know what I'm saying? Because that's not going to work out well. It's going to be unprofitable for everyone involved. But when you grieve the heart of the individual who's over you, how is that going to end up being profitable for you? This is why in the reverse we're looking at this, because he say don't be bitter to your wives, or don't irritate or anger them or do things against them purposely, because then that's not going to be profitable for you because they're not going to obey and submit to you. These are the things when you just look at the framework of how Yahuwah deals with us, that these things are not hard to understand when you understand the gospel of conduct between one to another. It's not hard. It's not hard at all. The stuff is hard to convey because individuals don't know the gospel. Or some people just don't want to do it. You have to accept that. See, you know what we had a problem here. You don't want to accept that people hate Yahuwah. It's okay. They're going to answer to him. It's okay if they hate him. How that hurt you because they hate you? That don't hurt me because you hate you. That don't hurt me in the least bit. That don't hurt me in the least bit. You ain't hurt nobody but yourself. You're not hurting me. Gotta let that be known. Let's continue. Yeah. Pray for us, for we trust we have good conscience in all things. This is verse 18, willing to live honestly. But I beseech you rather to do this, that I may be restored to you the sooner. Now the Elohim of Shalom, I brought again from the dead our Lord Yahushua, that great shepherd of the sheep, through the blood of the everlasting covenant, make you perfect, and every good work to do his will, working in you that which is well pleasing in his sight, through Yahushua HaMashiach, to whom be esteemed forever and ever. Amen. So let's go back to Colossians chapter 3. And let's look at when he say, let's not provoke your children to anger, that they might be discouraged. Let's look at discouraged. That word is a themo. To be disheartened, dispirited, or broken in spirit. Now we have to sit back and look at that. Now Yahuwah states in Psalms 51 that those of a broken and a contrite spirit, also in Isaiah 57, that those are those that he received. But we have to look at it that if you're the head, let's sit back and look and see. Let's pause. Let's go to Micah 6. And let's look at a statement that the Lord said. And we'll sit back and look at when we look at Yahushua dealing with his son, Yahuwah dealing with his son, dealing with Yahushua specifically. Did he anger him to cause him to be broken in spirit? He did not. So we have to sit back as a man. Do I do things that would break the spirit of those under my charge? Because much more is required from us than from them. Remember, said the woman's desire is going to be her husband. So that means you will. This goes back again to the conversation that we've had a couple times about dwelling with the weaker vessel according to knowledge. You have to dwell with her according to the will and knowledge of you. Who remember what Paul told them people? Some of you have not a knowledge of Elohim. I speak this to your shame. Micah 6. And see, a lot of them women like who will comment to brother, you want 6 and 1. You want someone to dwell with you according to knowledge, but then you don't want to submit to the knowledge of which he must dwell with you according to. You see, you can't have it both ways. You can't get the knowledge and not give the submission to the knowledge. Oh, let me rephrase that. You can't look for someone to, because who's not going to dwell with you according to his word, and then you don't submit to said word. No, he's not going to do that. So you can't seek the benefits that come from the covenant when you decide that you're not going to do that. And of course, when we look at it on the flip side, Yahushua dwelt with us, the weaker vessel, according to knowledge. And we dealt with that in the past. And maybe we'll rehash a few of those key components now to get us to the point of what we're discussing as being as a cornerstone after the similitude of the temple. Because at the end of the day, we need to be in the likeness of Yahuwah, period. There's no way around that. The woman becomes one with you, as the text states. So if you in the likeness of Yahuwah, then you can guide her in that same direction, which at the same token you can guide the children. If that's not happening, and see, it's not about how many scripts or precepts that we can be aware of to be able to recite. It's the manifestation of his character. That's how we pull that off. Nevertheless, Micah chapter 6 and verse 1. Hear you now what Yahuwah say, arise, continue before the mountains, and let the hills hear your voice. Hear you, O mountains, Yahuwah's controversy, and you strong foundations of the earth, for Yahuwah have a controversy with his people. He will plead with Yasharal. O my people, what have I done to you? Wherein have I wearied you? Testify against me. So let's look at something. This is this man talking to his wife. This is Yahuwah talking to his wife. He said he got a controversy. You're just going to look at the definitions. We ain't going through all the characters because that's not needed at this present time. The word for controversy is rev, a word that we dealt with before, and he has a dispute. Controversy at the Torah. Now let's look at, he said, plead. Let me plead with him. And that's your cop. To decide or to judge, to convince or to convict. So when you look at that, I want you to look at what it says. He said he would judge with Yasharal. He said, where have I wearied you? Word wearied is la'ah, to be impatient, to be grieved, or to be offended. He said, testify against it. Now look at it, right? We see husbands. Let's go back. Let me just rehash that verse so I can say it correctly. Be good in Luke chapter 12. We still holding Philippians chapter 2, though. Look what he said. He told you to don't be bitter against your wives. Now look at the context, and you see that right here in the text. Yahuwah is saying, where have I grieved you? Where have I done this at? Look what he says. Oh, my people, what have I done to you? Wherein have I wearied you? Testify against me. For I brought you up out of the land of Israel, redeemed you out of the house of servants. And I sent you before Moses, Aaron, and Miriam. Oh, my people, remember now what Balak, king of Moab, consulted, and what Balaam, the son of Beor, answered him from Shittim under Gilgal. And you may know the righteousness of Yahuwah. Oh, no. You familiar with them stories, eh? Who familiar with these stories? Listen, what happened when he consulted with Balak, a king of Moab, consulted with Balaam, son of Beor, and answered it? What happened? Who can tell me in this chat right now? What happened with Balaam and the king of Moab? Who can tell me? And we just went over this not too long. I take that back. We didn't go through it in detail. We just read some things that Balaam said. That he prophesied. Somebody got to answer that. I got all night. Bird, dispose of this for me, sir. Thank you. Somebody can answer this. I said, I got all night. I know one person can answer that. He said that if you can't answer that, that means you don't know the law too well. And that's sad with all these married men on this street. You mean to tell me that one of you gentlemen, and the worst part is you got time to look up and type up and Google or Bible search Balaam in your phone right now and go straight to the store and tell me. If you ain't know off the top. Sir, for this interested?
Yeah. Interested. Yeah. Interested.
Anybody else?
Yeah, everybody else.
Bird, come dispose of this for me, please.
Okay.
Anybody else? Anybody else that's gonna answer? I'm sorry. Anybody else gonna answer that? Do the covenant? Going once? Twice? So Stanley mentioned but that Balak wanted Moab to curse him. But what is the righteousness of Yahuwah? What did Yahuwah do? Who knows what Yahuwah did? What did he do? Who on here can answer that for me? I remember it was a time period too. I used to tell the men that too. But that's when we used to be on that phone line. The women used to be a lot swifter in answering questions too. I say, boy, you brothers ought to be ashamed. Ought to be ashamed.
Oh,
That was on time.
nah, it was.
It was on time.
Crazy.
Some people don't remember the phone. Some people say they learned better that way. Yeah, you have no choice. And I was way bigger of an a-hole by what I'm doing right now. And stop it. Yeah, Yahuwah did come and stop it. But what happened to the king of Moab? What happened to the king of Moab? That nigga got burned. So you can know the righteousness of Yahuwah. Somebody came to do something to his wife. Yahuwah said, oh no, you ain't going to be able to say I grieved you. Now ask you young men, and ask yourself this question. Could you be able to sit down and plead with your wife and say, where have I grieved you? And she wouldn't have a response. Do you know what I'm saying? Where have I grieved you? Where have I angered you, irritated? And I ain't talking about the regular stuff like I just don't like when he do this here, because nobody don't care about that. That's just your feelings. That'll change tomorrow. You know what I'm talking about? I'm talking about where you can honestly say, well, that nigga grieved me. But that nigga angered me with what that, because he tell you not to do that. So just because you can say, because we know the nature of a woman is emotional, don't mean that you ain't did something that woman was genuinely upset, that she was genuinely grieved. I ain't worried about being right. Shoot. You never know what your answer can lead to. You don't never know if your answer could still be relevant, even though that was a little specific. But nevertheless, you get one. You know what I'm saying? You got to ask yourself that. Because if you was to sit back and plead, not leading them to sin, he just said, remember, he said, husbands, don't be bitter. Again, hold on, let me read it again. Because I took it off the page. Hold on. I got it. Hold on. He said, husbands, love your wives, be not bitter against them. So it isn't necessary that it lead them to sin, because he said, testify where I've wearied you, I irritated you, or I angered you. Where have I done something that you can be able to say that I haven't been compassionate, merciful, faithful, and loving to you? Let me get that definition for wearied out here one more time. That was la'ah, where this person has become grieved, tired of something, weary, exhausted, or offended. You know what I'm saying? Remember what Paul made a statement that he said he seeks to have not offense against Elohim and man? This is why Yahuwah was making this statement in 6. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. This is why he's making that statement in Micah chapter 6. I got a dispute with my wife. Come plead with me and testify against me where I offended you. Come plead and testify against me where I exhausted you. Come plead and testify against me where I wearied you. Cause you to be angered and irritated based off of my conduct towards you. Not based off something that she just don't like because that's something she don't like. But I'm talking about genuine misconduct to that point. See, Yahuwah can plead with his wife and make that statement. He ain't never offended us. See, some people are like, yeah, he made me mad because you just didn't get something you want. See, that don't count in the natural sense of a woman's just mad because you didn't do something she wanted. But that your actual conduct may be considered, that she could testify against you that you were wrong. See, let me show you an example of what I mean. Galatians chapter 2. Or someone testifying against somebody and saying this is an offense. Give thanks to you and let his name be praised. Galatians chapter 2. Where I want to start this at. 2 and 7. The contrast, when they saw the bizarre of uncircumcision was committed unto me, as the gospel of circumcision was unto Peter. But he that wrought effectually, and Peter to the apostleship of the circumcision, the same was mighty in me towards the Gentiles. When James, Cephas, and John, who seemed to be pillars, received the grace that was given unto me, they gave to be Barnabas the right hands of fellowship, that we should go into the heathen, and they unto the circumcision. Only they would that we should remember the poor, the same which I also was forward to do. But when Peter was come to Antioch, I withstood him to the face because he was to be blamed. For before that certain came from James that he did eat with the Gentiles. But when they were come, he withdrew and separated himself, fearing them which were of the circumcision. And the other Yahudim dissembled likewise with him, insomuch that Barnabas was also carried away with the dissimulation. But when I saw that they walked not uprightly according to the truth of the gospel, I said unto Peter before them all, if you being a Yahudim live after the manner of the Gentiles and not do as the Yahudim, why compel you the Gentiles to live as do the Yahudim? So what did he see? He seen Peter worry about what the people were going to say. So he said Peter was to be blamed and he withstood him to his face. He could be able to testify against him that there's an offense. So you have to look at it. If you was to stand before your spouse and say, testify against me wherever I have wearied you, would there be an actual, effectual statement of fact? And if there's an effectual statement of fact, that means we ain't been dwelling with him according to knowledge. Period. We've been bitter against, because that's discouraging, like we just read in Hebrews 13. If we want those that we have rule over to obey and submit and to not grieve us, then we cannot grieve them either. We can't do that because it's not going to be profitable. It's not going to be any gain for anyone involved. And then who ends up failing, who ends up getting hurt the most? The children. The children. I was listening to this brother talk about this, and this real talk, right? A lot of people just feel like, just have kids. I would listen to was a brother talk about the son of the barbell. They went on some other stuff, but this man planned out his kids' life 25 years in advance. Most men don't think that far down the line, so we end up having children that get put in disadvantageous situations and circumstances that they have to crawl out of because you hadn't thought that far ahead. And most people feel like, oh, just have some more. Even though they're not in a space or position. Let's not even deal with monetarily. You're not even in a space and position mentally and emotionally before we even talk about spiritually to even impart anything of any significance or weight to this child. I told you this before. I'm a firm believer of it. I was a firm believer of it before I got in the word. And Yahuwah will not be a firm believer of it to the day that I die. That having children is for no other purpose than to prepare them for adulthood. That's it. To prepare them to be a functional man. That's it, period. All the other stuff is added. At the end of the day, anything else is not really of any circumstance or at all. Your job is to raise them to be a functional man, period. And to be able to carry on and create a legacy, period. That's it. To prepare them for adulthood. And now that you serve Yahuwah, to prepare them to serve Yahuwah. So that therefore that they can prepare their household to serve Yahuwah. All that other stuff is irrelevant. Bump with the world talking about all that extra stuff. All that stuff is irrelevant. At the root, that is the whole basis of parenthood as a man, to prepare this man for adulthood, to prepare him to be a man of the and a son of the living Elohim, and to function in a righteous and upright fashion, and to lead his household afterwards in the same token. We already know what the Torah said. I know Abraham. He'll teach his household the way of Yahuwah and do justice and judgment. At the end of the day, that's it. That's what it's about. Then the other stuff come behind that, leaving them behind an inheritance, things of that sort. But that's what it's about. You know what I'm saying? Now I can say because Muffin was born when she was born and I was of a young age, I'm sitting back looking at, no, I want nothing to do with that. I'm not financially, mentally, or emotionally in any state or form to actually care for another human life. And I have no desire to place myself in a position where I would create one. Didn't make sense. And I was not going to be careless in that regard, because it was more important to me to not do that than to have the temporary whim and gratification and put myself in a position that I was not ready to execute, and therefore have no regard for what would happen to my child. That would be selfish on my part. It didn't matter that I didn't have any children yet. I already knew. That's selfish, period. That's not fair to that child. They didn't ask to be here. You know what I'm saying? So they shouldn't have to suffer through because I'm an idiot. You know what I'm saying? But nobody taught me that. Nobody told me that. I just seen that from experience. Like, shoot, this is not a situation or circumstance that I desire to be in at a young age. Especially coming up with a lot of my peers were having children while we were still in high school. I told you a lot of, shoot, man, I went to get my hair cut the other day. My homeboy like, boy, you don't know. He said, boy, who child this is? I said, that little nigga do look familiar. I'm thinking that's one of our peers. Whole time, he's the son of one of our peers. And the daughter of another two people that we went to school with. This nigga's grown. And both of them grandparents now, on top of that, we're not even 40. Nigga, that done bugged out to me. That is what I was trying to avoid. I don't want to be no 39-year-old grandfather. That don't even make sense. Because what you think gonna happen if you had a child at 16? Now your child grown, you 34. Next thing you know, you a grandparent, you ain't even 40 yet. Nevertheless, yeah, I wasn't looking for that. I was trying to avoid that at all costs. Let's come up back over here. What was that? Was that Micah 6? I'm good with that. Philippians chapter 2. I'm trying to avoid that. But the whole key point of what we're looking at is the ability to that we have to conform as a man. That when we conform, matter of fact, Paul, let me just go ahead and do it. Genesis chapter 1, verse 26. Since I already read 1 Timothy chapter 2, because it said Adam was first formed, then Eve. And like I told you before, I definitely you can make a Genesis chapter 1, verse 24. I definitely took into account who that I would be procreating with. And I definitely wasn't going to risk procreating with a woman that I felt was not worthy enough to be the mother of my child. And I definitely felt as a young man that if I wouldn't marry her, why would I let her be the mother of my children? Didn't make sense to me. Two things in my youth that didn't make sense to me. Living with a woman and taking care of her like she's my wife, and I didn't have a desire to marry her, and impregnating a woman I wouldn't marry. Didn't make sense to me. You know what I'm saying? Nobody in my entire youth could give me a rational explanation of why that would be a wise course of action. So I'm like, dude, that's stupid. Oh, man, I'm like, that's you, man. I'm not gonna be taking care of this whole and I ain't gonna marry. Nigga, that's retarded. You know what I'm saying? Because I used to always, you don't know, bro, you ain't got no kids. Yeah, I know. I ain't got no kids. I ain't stupid like you. You just look at how she fine. You ain't look at the fact this whole crazy. She has no ability to take her way out of a paper bag. You know what I'm saying? That she has no level of nurturing and caring and encouragement or nothing that she can do for your child. You ain't care nothing about that. All you was worried about was get tingle in your penis. But that tingle in my penis to me was not worth the negative outcome that could come from impregnating this hoe. It wasn't worth it to me. That risk, that the only thing I ever did in my life where I sat back and looked at the risk was worth the reward for selling dope. And truth be told, that wasn't worth the risk, but that was a risk I was willing to take. I wasn't willing to risk impregnating a low level woman. I wasn't willing to take that risk. I didn't care how fine she was. It didn't matter. That's gonna be detrimental. That's why niggas around here complaining how they got child support. Niggas find out they can take care of a child that ain't theirs. And I know dudes who that happened to. That's a horrible thing to see. We don't think about none of that stuff. Genesis chapter 1, verse 24. Elohim said, let the earth bring forth the living creature after his kind, cattle and creeping thing and beast of the earth after his kind. And it was so. Elohim made the beast of the earth after his kind, and cattle after their kind, and everything that creep upon the earth after his kind. And Elohim saw that it was good. Elohim said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creep upon the earth. So Elohim, created man in his own image. And the image of Elohim created he him. Male and female created he them. Now we've talked about this word for likeness in the past, so we shall revisit, considering that we're looking at polish after a similitude of the house, which goes back to what we were discussing a while back in Ezekiel 43. Well, let's take a look at the image and we'll pause and we'll look at the characters for this. And it's Demuth, if you remember, likeness, similitude. You got Dalit, you got Mean, you got U, and you got Tau. So you have a few moments for Dalit, Mean, U, and Tau. Dalit, Mean, U, and Tau. Demuth. You know, one thing I can say for the most part in my youth, that I was able to look at things and try to think and make decisions a little bit further on down the line. Like even when I started hustling, I had a mindset of I'm moving to do this to be able to get to this point to do this, this, and this. You know what I'm saying? And of course, that got magnified even more because I didn't play chess on the street. I didn't play it a lot in prison, but I used to sit around with dudes. They'd be like, the way you think, they'd be like, man, I would think you'd be a way better chess player than this. I'm like, it bores me. You know what I'm saying? I get bored with it after a while. It's no different than with Madden. Yeah, playing. And when I say with Madden, not because it's a video game, because football is akin to chess to a certain extent because it's strategy. It's being able to look at your opponent and ascertain what it is how they're trying to attack you, and to be able to counteract that attack and to thwart it. And it's only for so long that with a game that I'm going to focus on that much mental energy into and to be able to do it. Because that's one of the reasons why I don't like football because of the hitting. It's the game. And that came from playing Madden since 1991. It's the game. I began to understand the game and what it's about, how you're trying to attack someone. Can you see how they're trying to attack you? Can you process information quickly? Can you foresee ahead of time what is being done to you? Well, when you sit back and you look at it as a man, that's how we're supposed to think. We're supposed to be thinking further on down the line. The woman's mind is not made that way. They don't think that way because that's not the position that they were created to be in. She was created to be the helper. Recall, we're looking at it, you're supposed to guard and keep that garden. You're supposed to labor and protect that garden or that paradise. So you're supposed to be thinking that far down the line. Well, we've been kind of accustomed to, mainly because we've been raised in a patriarchal environment, to believe in our minds, mainly probably because from being whatever your viewpoint of your mother was, that woman has that ability to think that far down the line. When you remember that they by nature are emotional creatures. So therefore, they don't think that far down the line. You have to be able to lay that plain vision out for them. This is why they'll come and look at you and say, you make the decision. Because one, they can't handle the weight or the brunt of it. You know what I'm saying? And they don't have a desire to carry the brunt of it. These are things that are different because we don't live in a society of that sort that says that that's what a man should do. They tell you, oh, we're equal and this, that, there, and the third. This is why I mentioned that a long time ago to y'all. Don't believe that crap that a woman mature faster than a man. That's pure folly, pure and utter nonsense. Pure and utter nonsense. Because if the women mature faster than the man, and it's single parent households and the women teaching the men, but the men are immature, what does that say about the woman? This is just simple process. If you're going to be analytical and use certain things as the baseline, as a point, then you have to look at it. If you're saying that these women are maturing faster than these young men, and the majority of these women are raising these young men, that means these young men should be mature by product that the more mature gender is raising them. And if you by product say that these young men are immature, then by proxy you are acknowledging that so is that woman. You see, you can't have it both ways if you're going to be analytical. Because when you're dealing with analytics deals with nothing but facts. Things that are tangible and proven to be true. There's no feelings with analytics. Strictly numbers, strictly facts, strictly things that point to cause and effect. Period. That's it. Same token when the book say you deal with lust, lust bring forth sin, you bring forth death. That's analytics. There's no wiggle room with that. You desire, you sin, you die. Simple as that. Well, let's continue. What y'all got for me? Dalit, mean, what it was, ooh and tau. Dalit, mean, ooh and tau. What y'all got? And that's all you need. Yahusha sacrifice secures you to a covenant. Where you got Ruach from, Stan? Oh, definitely. My apologies. Definitely let that mean slip. I don't know that. My apologies, sir. So think about that. The Yahusha sacrifice secures you to that covenant. And what does that go back again about lightning? Takes us back to Philippians chapter 2. Hey, look at them. What I was thinking about. That's definitely the only other character side. I don't know, my mind is wasted. I don't know for some reason why I was thinking about Ross. That's what, So again, to be able to be in the likeness, and again, it's how the man is the head of the woman, but the head of the man is the Mashiach. And again, it goes back to the point we were discussing on Wednesday. To get to that conforming, you got to die. You got to be born again. Your temple has to be dedicated. That's why Yahushua son of Nun said, as for me at my house, we'll serve Yahuwah. So notice he said, me. This is what I do in mine. And everybody who dwell in it is going to see I'm conformed. So I'm going to conform them to that. And again, that's coming from, remember what I mentioned before, Genesis chapter 18, starting about verse 15, I would believe, what he said about Abraham. In order, because we're still going to reach to that, with it. The woman is supposed to conform to the man because that's a similitude of you conforming to your husband, which is Yahushua. But the only way that you can conform to the image of your husband is because your husband instructed you. You know what I'm saying? You can't look for your wife to conform to your image and you have not instructed her on what it is that for her to be able to pull that off. There's no way that she's going to be in your likeness and image without the instruction. You got to understand something. Pause. What I said I was going to for this? I don't remember. But go to John chapter 1. I was going back to Philippians chapter 2 and never got there. Go to John chapter 1. I couldn't find the page. 1 and 6. It's hide. Like you hide. Don't hide from the sir. And I jumped to Philippians 2 to deal with complaining and murmuring. to begin with. But nevertheless, and why are we looking at all this? Because to whom much is given, much is required. Much was committed to the Lord. Much is committed to the man. That's why he say, he that rule amongst men must be just. When you understand what's been committed to your charge, this is why when you look at it, there's a few times where Yahuwah spoke to the women about certain things, but he'll never talk to them. He'll never talk to them. He never told the women, teach the household. He never told the women, teach your sons. He never told them that. Because that wasn't committed to the men, because that was committed to the man the day he created Adam when he said, dress it and keep it. It wasn't committed to them. That was committed to that man. Since because of the curse, her desire is going to be to you, and you will rule over her, and I'm committing more to you. I'm not committing that to her. So you can't bequeath that to her and put more on her than what he gave her. Because what ends up happening is we can see in this modern day time, where these women take on the attributes of a man. You hear them talking about, I just don't want to be strong anymore. Most of them do that because that's a defense mechanism. Why is that a defense mechanism? Probably more than likely from poor choices in men who are not able to allow themselves to conduct themselves in a feminine fashion. So therefore, they have created a false exterior of strength to be able to maintain a facade of which they do not want to keep. Because they will not do that's against their essential nature. They feel like they have to conduct themselves in this fashion in order to function. And it makes them become overwhelmed, drained, utterly depressed, drunks, whores, and drug addicts. You know what I'm saying? Because that's outside of your essential nature. You were not created to be rough and tough in that fashion. You created that to be able to quote unquote survive. And it's detrimental to your mental health. Nevertheless, and your spiritual well-being for that matter. John 1:6. There was a man sent from Elohim whose name was John. And don't get that strength that I'm referring to as being contradictory to the strength that is described for the Kayel Ishah, or the virtuous woman, because that is not the strength that we're referring to. See, that woman's strength is in Yahuwah. That's a different type of strength. That's not the strength that these women out here be talking about. I only mention that because a girl I know, and she was like, she mentioned that. She's getting love correctly. So she feels like, you know what, I can be feminine. She said it was scary. But she said, but it feels good though. She said that I can be feminine and be able to flourish in my femininity. I say, you know what, good for you. Because you're older now. And I'm glad you've gotten to that point that you can understand that. Do you know what I'm saying? And that you felt like that there was an individual to the point where you could be feminine. Nevertheless, the same came for a witness, to bear witness of the light, that all men through him might believe. He was not that light, but was sent to bear witness of that light. That was the true light, which light every man that come into the world. He was in the world, and the world was made by him, and the world knew him not. He came unto his own, and his own received him not. But as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of Elohim, even to them that believe on his name, which were born, not of blood, nor the will of the flesh, nor the will of man, but of Elohim. So if you're born of Elohim, then you would be in the image or similitude or likeness of Yahushua. This is how you would be born of Elohim. You believe, you were immersed, you're raised in the likeness of his resurrection. Let's take a look at that in Romans 6 before we go back to Philippians 2. Just the likeness of his resurrection. Because I just want y'all to read that off. Just 6 and 4. Gotta read. We ain't gonna read all of it. Just 6 and 4. There's a cover real quick. Therefore, we are buried with him by immersion into death. That is, like Hamashiach was raised up from the dead by the esteem of Abba, even so we should walk in newness of life. For if we've been planted together in the likeness of his death, we shall also be in the likeness of his resurrection. Knowing this, that our old man is crucified with him, that the body of sin might be destroyed, that henceforth we should not serve sin. For he that is dead is freed from sin. Now, if we be dead with Hamashiach, we believe that we shall also live with him. So we have to consider that. Because he said he humbled himself and became a servant and was obedient even unto death. Let's take a trip to that Matthew 20 that I called for before I forget. Take a look at Matthew 20. And we read some of this when we read Luke 22 on Wednesday. About he that's greatest to be a servant. For the man is greater than the woman. So this goes again to the point of, and I guess we can get 1 Peter 3 right after this, dwelling with her according to knowledge. Because for us to dwell with her according to knowledge, that's because we have conformed to the image of the Son. We're made in his likeness. We're made in that likeness because we took up that sacrifice. We took up our stake and we followed him. And we died daily, as it says, or Paul stated, dying daily. Masha told you to pick up your stake and let me not misquote the man, and take up it daily and follow him, or to mortify your members, to deny yourself, to die to sin every single solitary day. And when you're doing that, that means that you're taking, because for you to take up that stake is for you to take on the form of a servant. Period. At the end of the day, that's what that is. That's another form of that you're conforming to the similitude of the temple. Because we already discussed that. John 2, he said, destroy this temple, I'll rear it up again in 3 days. So, of course, as we talked in the past, that a king is to serve. You can't look to lead and you don't have the desire to serve. And there's many ways that you serve. One of the first ways that a man serves his household is to teach it, to instruct it. That is a service. Teaching someone is to serve. This is why Yahushua told his apostles that. He said, I sit as one amongst you as one that served. And he's saying, when you finish doing all of these things, say we are unprofitable servants doing what it is that our duty is to do. This is why people look at, in the natural sense, they look at school teachers in that fashion, like they should be paid more, they should be this, because they're servants, because that is a service. And it's usually a thankless service. It's usually a service that you do out of love. So the more love you have for your household, of course, the more that you would instruct it. The more that you can instruct it, the more responsibilities that you can give to them. So you can't give responsibilities without instruction. Can't do it. This is why he said those who knew their master's will, but did things worthy of stripes, will be beaten with a few stripes. That's why he said that, because you had been instructed. I can't give you responsibilities. That's why a lot of dudes who preach the word ain't got no business preaching it. Who instructed you to be able to have that responsibility? You don't have that responsibility. No one taught it to you. That's impossible for you to do that. Nevertheless, Matthew chapter 20, verse 25. Yahushua called them unto him and said, you know that the princes of the Gentiles exercise dominion over them, and they that are great exercise authority upon them. But it shall not be so among you, but whosoever will be great among you, let him be your minister. Whosoever will be chief among you, let him be your servant. Even as the Son of Man came not to be ministered unto, but to minister and to give his life a ransom for many. So what does that take us back to? Remember that it says, husbands, love your wives as a mashah and lay your life down for. So what does that mean to serve? Does that mean serve her in the fashions that we see simps tell you to do that in this time? Oh, no. Not in the least bit. Not in the least bit, not at all, not in any shape, form, or fashion. But that means that you do the, see, let's go on and get that Genesis 18. Let's just go on and do it. Matter of fact, I spoke too soon. Let's get 1 Peter 3 and 7 out of the way first. And then Genesis 18 would be a little bit more better. We need to do 1 Peter 3 first. That was your movie went back in the day, Mo Better Blue. I don't even call that movie. 1 Peter 3 and 1. 1 Peter 3 and 1. I said 7, but we'll get the context of everything that's around it. Likewise, you wives, this is 1 Peter 3 and 1, be in subjection to your own husbands, that if any obey not the word, that they also may without the word be won by the conduct of the wife. I told y'all this before numerous times. You women want to point out, tell this man he ain't doing this and he ain't doing that. Now, of course, this is referring to people who ain't even dealing with no word to that extent. But if you would just be more focused on your conduct and what you're supposed to do versus what he's doing or what he's not doing, then you might be able to win him over by godly conduct. But your mind don't think that way because you feel like you have it in your mind that I got to be heard. I have to be understood. There's a time and a place for that. But when you look at the time and place for that is not if this person's conduct is not in line with the word. That's not the time and place. You're not going. I promise you, you're not going to win him over. I promise you, you're not going to win him over. I promise you, he's going to ignore everything that you say. You might feel like, well, that's not right, or this, that, there, and the third. But at the end of the day, that's the reality of the situation or circumstance. You can tell this man this, that, there, and the third, and he ain't gonna listen to nothing you got to say. Not about his conduct. He don't listen to nothing you got to say. Very few men will sit back and listen to you and be understanding in that regard when you're trying to check him because he's doing something without the word. You got more power to be able to win him over by keeping the word and manifesting that in your conduct and opening your mouth. You may not believe me. You may not believe Peter. But at the end of the day, take it how you want to. Take it how you want to. You know what I'm saying? I'm just trying to tell you what the Lord said, make life easier. He said, while they behold your chaste conduct coupled with fear. Because at the end of the day, if this man out of pocket and he see your conduct is chaste, look at that Greek word for chaste. And he say, he see you reverence you. Come on, man. You know how foolish this nigga gonna have to be the biggest dummy in the history of dummies. That word is hagnos. You're reverence, you're venerable, you're sacred, you're pure from carnality. You're pure from every fault. You're chaste and you're modest, you're immaculate. That's what that means for be chaste. Pure from every fault. He ain't gonna have nothing to say against you. Period. That's the reverse of what we was looking at in Micah 6 when he said, you know what? Plead against me. Testify against me where I wearied you. Well, if you're trying to win him without the word, because his conduct is against the word, and you're without all with fear to Elohim and reverence to your husband, this nigga gonna look like a damn fool. That's why don't open your mouth. Just keep keeping the word. Stop focusing on what he's doing and what he ain't doing, and focus on what you need to do and what you're supposed to do, and don't give him no room to talk. Nevertheless, this is what he said, who's adorning. Let it not be that outward adorning of plaiting the hair and wearing of gold or putting on of apparel, but let it be that hidden man of the heart, and that which is not corruptible, even the ornament of a meek and quiet ruach, which is in the sight of Elohim after great price. For after this manner in the old time, the Kadash women also, who trusted in Elohim, adorned themselves, being in subjection unto their own husbands. Even as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord, whose daughters you are, as long as you do well and are not afraid with any amazement. So at the end of the day, be a humble woman, be quiet, you know what I'm saying? Be humble, things of this nature, and that's valuable to Yahuwah. If your husband don't find that valuable, that's a reflection of him. That ain't got nothing to do with you. And it shouldn't have anything to do with what you do or what you don't do. Because at the end of the day, you ought to do it for Yahuwah. Anyway, you know what I'm saying? You shouldn't be looking at your service to Yahuwah as contingent on how good your husband treats you. Come on, man. That's no different than a man's service to Yahuwah shouldn't be contingent on how obedient or disobedient his wife is. That ain't got nothing to do with nothing. Because you ain't gonna be like, I'm gonna give you a pass, brother. Your wife was rebellious. No, you ain't getting no pass. I'm gonna give you a pass, sister, because your husband was an idiot. Or you ain't getting no pass. Can't think that way. That frame of thinking is a surefire way for you to fail. When I'm talking about fail, I'm talking about burning in hell. That's a surefire way to fail. There ain't no way to think. That's not a proper way of thinking. Likewise, you husbands, dwell with them according to knowledge, giving honor unto the wife as unto the weaker vessel, and as being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers be not hindered. Now look at that. Now, if you don't know how to give honor to your wife, and if you don't know how to dwell with her according to knowledge, this can get your prayers held up. The way Yahuwah ain't gonna hearken on you. Now, the Greek word for honor here is tamah, and it means value by which the price is fixed, the price of itself, honor which belongs or is shown to one. Honor which one has by reason of rank or state of office of which he holds. So, or reverence or respect. So you ought to give respect unto your wife. Your wife should be, why is she valuable? Paul. See, look at this right here in Proverbs 12 and 1. Someone did that with. How is she valuable to you? Well, let's see what the text says in this here. How is your wife valuable to you? Because if your wife is what has been described, and that page is no longer present, if your wife is described as what has been described in 1 Peter chapter 3 in her conduct, then this is what happens. Proverbs 12 and 1. Oh, I'm in the wrong verse. Proverbs 12 and 4. My apologies. My mistake. Proverbs 12 and 4. A virtuous woman is a crown to her husband, but she that maketh shame is rottenness in his bones. Now, we just discussed that. They say this strong woman, because she would be strong based on her reverence and her chaste conduct towards Elohim, would be a crown to her husband. This was what would make her strong. Of course, Atara is the word for crown, things of that nature. Ayin, Tet, Rosh, and Hay, for those who looking at, but we're not going to go through that because we did that already. And what did he tell you about a virtuous woman in Proverbs 31? That her price is far above rubies. Who can find one? Our word is Messiah, to find, to attain. Because it was funny, because when the brother was having this conversation with these women, one sister said, she said, now I see why y'all move so quick when you get one. Because some women might have a thought process of, dang, this nigga want to marry me quick. If that nigga ain't no simp, that mean you pretty solid. You know what I'm saying? If you know that man got good sense, strong level of wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, that nigga like, well, I'm trying to get married to you. And he trying to move swiftly. Oh, you got him a soldier. He ain't trying to waste no time because he ain't trying to let nobody else find that dude. To a certain extent, like I said, Matthew, nigga grab that dude, sell everything he got, dig a hole through it. He said, no, I can't. He wasn't lying. He said, that brother said, you look here, man. He said, when I found mine, I had to snatch her up real quick. Didn't waste no time. Because you hear women say, he was with me for 10 years. He ain't never married me. He got her married her 3 months. He knew there was a soldier there. He was with you for 10 years because you were lying. He just lied and said, I'm just tolerating you, whatever the case may be. Anytime, for the most part, you see a dude be with a woman for a little bit of time, he leave her, move on to another. Because men don't get married haphazardly if he has a brain. See, a woman get married haphazardly. For the most part, men don't do that. Not a man who's functional. Let me say that. Not a man who's a man of wisdom and understanding. He don't do that. So this man move and he do that. Oh, she's a soul. That's a good one. He ain't even wait no time. Let me go ahead and lock this one down now. I'm buying this one now. Period. It's in the discussion. In the discussion. He ain't finna waste no time. He moving quick. There's ain't nothing to talk about. We ain't let's go. You know what I'm saying? It's a lot of hoes out here. There's a lot of hoes out here. One of the women's responsible. Ain't a lot of righteous men out here. If there's more righteous men out here than it is good women, let that be known. And there's more women on the earth than men. So what that tell you? Now you can probably get a good understanding why Yahuwah made more women than men. They already know these hoes crazy. He already said your heart's like snares and nets and your hands like bands. So shoot, if you want to go by what they say is 2 to 3 or maybe 4 women to men, shoot, out of them 4, 3.5 of them hoes. Straight up and down. So you talking about, come on, man, 3.5 of them hoes. And that's bad when you got a half. Hoes, sluts. And they ain't got to necessarily be hoes and sluts because they throwing around some butt. But of course, most women don't believe that because they got a whole circle of whole friends who tell them how great of a woman they are. Yet no one wants you. They only want you sexually. Nigga don't want to take care of you. Nigga don't want to die for you. Nigga don't want to teach you nothing. Then if a woman gets somebody who's going to teach him something, because he didn't recognize that this woman wasn't worthy of that, she dragged him through the mud because she think he's stupid. Because how could you love me? Have you not known me? Have you not had a conversation with me to see that I don't even love myself, that I don't even respect myself, that I'm not even worthy of any of these benefits that you're trying to extend? Let me treat you like a sucker. Now, he done drove himself crazy trying to love someone who don't even want to receive it. That's a sad state of affairs in the world that we live. But nevertheless, Genesis chapter 18. We didn't talk about that before. You know, Yahuwah done talk to young men what to do. 18 and 16. Yahuwah ain't tell you, heal that woman till she stop being a whore. He said a whore is a deep pitch. He said, you better leave that whore alone. Ain't that what he said? He said, you better don't let the world fool you with that crap. That's woman talk. That's liberal woman talk at that. You're supposed to heal a woman and let. No, Yahuwah said, leave that whore alone. Ain't that what he said? Y'all better look it up. Let me find that. Yahuwah said, leave that whore alone. Play with it if you want her. Yahuwah ain't tell you to love her out of whore. Yahuwah said, leave that whore alone. Yahuwah said, she a deep pit. Right there, Proverbs 23 and 27. For a whore is a deep pit, and a strange woman is a narrow pit. He said, you better leave them hoes alone. Mess with that hoe if you want to. Say she lie in wait as for prey and increase the transgressors among men. He's trying to tell you. Hold on. I'll back it up, let you hear all of this. Hold on. He said, the father of the righteous is verse 24. This is where it started. I'm going to go to 24 and stop at 28. You can hear the whole totality, just so you know this is what Yahuwah talking. The father of the righteous shall greatly rejoice. He that beget a wise child shall have joy of him. The father and your father and your mother shall be glad. She that bare you shall rejoice. Listen what he's saying. My son, give me your heart and let your eyes observe my ways. Now I heard I just was listening to Dame Dad said something real. If you're a child and your parents pay your bills, they can tell you what to do. But once you become a man, you on your own, he can't do nothing but give you advice. Now look what Solomon is saying. He's saying, my son, give me your heart, give me your mind, son. Give me your mind, son, because I'm finna tell you something. I need you to take that with you, son. Don't be no fool. I need you to take that with you, son. Listen to what he says. My son, give me your heart. Let your eyes observe my ways. Let me see if he get observed for you now. Just feel me now. This the word of Yahuwah. This is what Yahuwah say. That word for observe is ratzah, to be pleased with, to satisfy, to seek favor. But there's a word up under that as well. And it's natsar. And that's the guard to watch over. Guess what? And what he turned around, we looked at in the garden, what he told you to do, dress and keep it, right? Guard. Protect it. He say, son, he say, just go ahead and see that my guard the ways that are pleasing that you see me do. He said, come on now. Then what he said now. For a whore is a deep pitch, and a strange woman is a narrow pit. She also lie and wait as for prey, and increase the transgressors among men. Who said, you better leave them hoes alone, nigga. And when it say increase, it say to act treacherously, deceitful, to deal treacherously, faithlessly, offend. That's what she gonna increase. What you see in the earth. You see a lot of niggas leaving messing with them hoes, ain't it? Play with it. That sound like you would say, love the whole about her. That sound like you would say, heal her. No, let me tell you something, right? I said this other week, and I believe a man can't turn a hoe into a housewife. It's only one person got that ability. That's Yahuwah. Yahuwah can turn a hoe into a housewife. You can't, though. And if you think you can, you're a damn fool. You know what I'm saying? Only Yahuwah can turn a hoe into a housewife. Because he's the only one that has the ability to renew the mind. You can't renew a mind. You can't love someone to change in the way that they think. Only the word can do that. If a nigga don't want to follow the word, what you gonna do? That's the part that I be tripping on when women be going hard. Like, you know, you ain't never warned no woman about no man. He definitely warned a man about a woman, though. Because you like this here, every woman ain't a wife. Period. Don't come at me, what about your mama? You know, my mama could be a whore for all you know. My mama could be masculine for all you know. You know what I'm saying? My mama may not be the example, the epitome of what a wife is. So that's just a stupid statement in my estimation when women say that. Why do they say it? They're trying to play on the thought process that you hold your mama in such a high esteem that you would disregard negative conduct on her behalf. But as a man of wisdom, you can't do that. If your mama ain't a woman, a wife caliber, it ain't what it is. They ain't got nothing to do with you. That ain't disrespecting your mother. Shoot, I wouldn't marry my mom if I was a man. That's what you tell them. They got nothing to do with me. But, matter of fact, don't even mention that. My mama ain't got nothing to do with the fact you're a whore. Ain't got nothing to do with that. You're a whore. My mama ain't got nothing to do with that. My mama ain't got nothing to do with the fact is if you're a wife, life, material woman. My mama ain't got nothing to do with that. And truth be told, the way your mother conducts herself, will give you the ability to discern rather quickly if the woman that is in front of you was wife material or not. But that's another conversation for another day. Genesis 18:16. And and the men rose up from this and looked toward Sodom, and Abraham went with him to bring them on the way. Yahuwah said, shall I hide from Abraham that thing which I do, seeing that Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation? All nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. For I know him, that he will command his children and his household after him. They shall keep the way of Yahuwah to do justice and judgment, that Yahuwah may bring upon Abraham that which he has spoken of him. Look what he said. He will command his sons, I should say, and his household. Let's get that word for house. That's what he said he'll do. We get all that so you can see what it say. So you can see for yourself what it say. Won't be no doubt in your mind. Of course, for command is sabah, which is to give charge, to order, to lay charge upon. So the first thing you see that Abraham gonna have in his house is he sets order. That's the first thing he got going on. I'm gonna set order. And of course, it's bought for household. He gonna set order. When justice is sadah, you're gonna do what's right. You're gonna do what's right. Why are you going to do what's right? Because as a man, he set order. So if you dwell with this woman according to knowledge, the first thing you have to do is set order. See, let's look at something. Matthew chapter 7. Matter of fact, before you get to Matthew chapter 7, go to Psalms 103. Psalms 103 and 8. Yahuwah is merciful. This is Psalms 103 and 8. Yahuwah is merciful and gracious. Indeed, slow to anger and plenteous in mercy. So pause. The first thing we look at as a man dwelling with your wife according to knowledge is to be merciful. Now, I've mentioned these things. The first place that we could look at that is what that is, John 8, with the woman who got caught in adultery. He said, woman, no man condemn you. She said, none, Lord. He said, I condemn you not, go and sin not. He dwelt with his wife according to knowledge. He dwelt with her according to mercy. Of course, you know that. He said, he that showed mercy will have mercy returned. He shows himself merciful to the mercy to the merciful, because mercy rejoices against judgment. This is one of the attributes of Yahuwah as described in Exodus chapter 33. So when you dwell with your wife according to knowledge, we talk about conforming to the image of Elohim, being made in his likeness. Because at the end of the day, we looked at Demus, and that likeness or similitude of his image is to be sacrificed like Yahushua sacrificed himself, which would cause you to labor, like we read in Genesis chapter 2, and keep the garden, or dress, because he made the man to dress it and keep it, to labor, to work, and to have charge or dominion. To have charge over something, order has to be set. And regardless of what the world tells you, the average woman wants a man to give orders, to direct and to lead, because you leave her to her own devices, she will get into folly and cause utter chaos for herself and others. You know what I'm saying? Period, point blank. She needs the discipline and the structure, something to keep her mind occupied. Because if you don't keep her mind occupied, no book tell you that. Let me get it. Oh, let me show you why. I'll tell you that. 1 Timothy 5, man. Book tell you that. I didn't let the word tell it to you. I ain't gonna tell you that. When you see in the word of Yahuwah, you take it up with Yahuwah, you don't like it. I ain't gonna argue with you about it. 1 Timothy 5 and 11. He said, but the younger widows refuse. They've begun to wax wanton against Mashiach. They will marry, having damnation, because they cast off their first faith, and withal they learn to be idle, wandering about from house to house. And not only idle, but tattlers also, and busybodies, speaking things which they ought not. Chaos, confusion. But she ain't got nothing to do. She ain't got no order. So she around here doing whatever. She got herself involved in things that ain't got nothing to do with her. She's sitting around running her mouth. That's why they said, I was therefore that younger women married their children by the house and give none occasion to the adversary to speak reproachfully. So you got to find her son to do. There got to be some order to be set. She got to have instruction. You got to have something to do. Back to Psalm 103, because she ain't got nothing to do. It's probably going to be negative. Unfortunately, most women are not self-disciplined and self-directed. You know what I'm saying? And that's okay. That's in general. That's not the standard or the rule. That's just in general. You know what I'm saying? That's just in general. There has to be a framework. This is what's to be done. The same because again, they're not builders. They've never built anything in the history of mankind. So we can't come into it with that thought process that that's what they're going to do. Because they're not. They're going to get into folly, nevertheless. And why are they going to get into folly? Because usually they'll have a bunch of women friends who into folly and they get sucked into it. Just as children do. Verse 9. Well, the next thing, right? Slow to anger, plenteous in mercy. One of the things what we could look at with Yahushua being slow to anger is in is in Mark chapter 3 when he healed the man with the withered hand. And he looked upon the people and he was angry because of the hardness of their hearts. We talked about that before. And again, that's dealing with patience, which is dwelling with this woman according to knowledge. You just can't get because this woman does something that you don't care for. And now you just shoot off the handle and you're mad and you're angry and you're losing yourself. That's not dwelling with her according to knowledge. Remember, this is what it says about Yahuwah. He's merciful, he's gracious, he's slow to anger, and he's plenteous in mercy. This is what happens when you get conformed to his image, because this is how he conducts himself towards us. This is the next thing he said, he will not always chide, which means to contend or to strive, neither will he keep his anger forever. He has not dealt with us after our sins, nor rewarded us according to our iniquities. So then you have to look at that. You don't necessarily deal with the people in your household according to what they've done, because that's according to what mercy is. That takes us back to when we were discussing with that woman who got caught in adultery. He didn't deal with her according to her sin. Her sin said she ought to die. He didn't deal with her according to that. So there was forgiveness with him, and that he might be feared. That's what Psalms tell us. So if the person, of course, you don't allow someone to exploit and take advantage of that. But if this woman, because prayerfully the woman would have done anything to the point where she would be stoned. But if she's done something and she sees that there's forgiveness, then there's a chance that she will reverence and honor you. And then the ability for them to obey and submit would be greater than to just lash out. Remember, the book tells us that anger rests in the bosom of fools. Usually when we lash out, it's because we're having an emotional response because we have not allowed ourselves to process things in a clear and concise fashion, and we respond. You should never have a conversation, especially of anything of gravity, in an emotional state. If you find yourself in an emotional state, speaking of something of weighty importance, it would be better served to say that I am not in the emotional capacity to have this conversation. It would be more productive if we stop right now and have this conversation later, or you go pray. Period. You grab your wife, you go pray with her. Those are the only two options that you have when you find yourself having a conversation where you see that you are being that you are becoming emotional. Even if it's the woman, you find yourself being emotional, you should ask your husband, can we go pray? If you say, let's not continue this conversation because this is not going to be productive for the both of us. That's how you handle that. That's it. That's either or. Anything other than that, you being carnal and ain't nothing good going to come from that. You can never have a conversation of any importance when one or both parties are emotional, because nothing is going to be resolved. And 99.9% of the time, one or both parties are going to say something that is going to sting the other person's ego or emotion. And once words come out your mouth, you can't take them back. You know what I'm saying? You can't take them back. And for the most part, when people get angry, they say things that they don't mean. But you can't take the effect that those words had once you say, I'm sorry. You can't take that back. So you have to be careful with your words. You got to be careful what you say. Nevertheless, he said, as far as the heaven is high above the earth, so great is his mercy towards them that fear him. As far as the east is from the west, so far he removed our transgressions from us. Like as a father pity his sons, so Yahuwah pity them that fear him. For he know our frame, he remembers that we are dust. As for man, his days are as grass, and as the flower of the field, so he flourished. Notice that he say he know our frame. That word for frame is yet, sir. Your purpose, your framework, your pottery. That's Yod, Sod, and Raj. But notice that he say he know your frame. Let's take a look at something. I want to believe this Jeremiah chapter 5. Is it Jeremiah 5? Come over to the book of Jeremiah. And this will give us another aspect of being conformed to his image. I don't believe it's Jeremiah 5. It is not. It is not. It is not. Give me a second. Jeremiah 18, if you will. 18 and 1. Jeremiah 18. The word which came to Jeremiah from Yahuwah saying, also arise, go down to the potter's house, and there I will cause you to hear my words. I just want you to get the word for potter, and it's yatsar, and it's someone who forms, fashions, or frames. Also means to predetermine or preordain or to be formed. So again, see the conformity in, he telling you go down to the potter's house. Then I went down to the potter's house, and behold, he wrought a work on the wheels. Word for wheels here is oven, and it's the potter's wheel. And the vessel that he made was made of clay, was marred in the hand of the potter. So he made it again another vessel, as seemed good to the potter to make. Of course, you know that's asah, but I want you to look at marred. That word is shakah. It means to destroy, to corrupt, to go to ruin, or to decay, to be corrupted, to be injured, to be ruined, to be rotted. Come over here to Isaiah 53. Yeah. First Adam, last Adam. He said the first vessel, he made a vessel of clay. It was marred in the potter's hand. He ruined it. He corrupted it. Because remember, he didn't corrupt that first covenant. We did that. That was all in our hands. He definitely ruined and corrupted his son. I know I said Isaiah 53, but it ain't Isaiah 53. It's like 2. If I can get there, maybe we can actually read it. Isaiah 52 and 13. Isaiah 52 and 13. Hold Jeremiah 18, still holding Philippians chapter 2. Matter of fact, just make it 52 and 11. This is Isaiah chapter 52, verse 11. Depart you, go you out from thence, touch no unclean thing, go you out of the midst of her, be you clean that bear the vessels of Yahuwah. For you shall not go out with haste, nor go about flight, for Yahuwah will go before you, and the Elohim of Yasharal will be your reward. Behold, my servant shall deal prudently, he shall be exalted, and extolled, and be very high. I just want to sit back and just get you that word for prudent, which you should know that it's a call. That is to be circumspect or to be wise. And that's what I was mentioning before about when you had that foresight, because you're supposed to be circumspect and wise. You're supposed to do things in a prudent fashion. You're supposed to be a prudent thinker. That's why he says a prudent wife come from Yahuwah. So when you have a woman who you know is wise and circumspect, Yahuwah gave you that woman. He definitely ain't going to give a prudent woman to an unprudent man. That doesn't make any sense. Nevertheless, as many were astonished at you, his visage was so marred more than any man, and his form more than the sons of men. So shall he sprinkle many nations, the kings shall shut their mouths at him. For that which had not been told them shall they see, and that which they have not heard they shall consider. Now let's look at that, because clearly y'all know what that's referring to. But when we look at visage, you have the word moray, which is his sight, appearance, and vision, a spectacle. Now it's a little slight different word for marred in this particular verse. And it's mishkap, or disfigurement, or face, or corruption. Something, so his visage has been corrupted or disfigured, if you will. Of course, you know, they plucked his beard out, beat the brakes off of him, things of that nature. And his form would be more than the sons of men. Now, form is toar. His shape, his outline, his figure, his appearance. It's been battered, it's been bruised, it's been corrupted. Well, we know how the Lord was corrupted. He was corrupted in death. Not that he saw corruption in regards of, like I said with Lazarus, it's been 4 days now, he stinks, but he died. Because sin is corruption, is ruin in the sight of you. Let's go back to Jeremiah 18. Because regardless, the key component that we're going to see over and over again is that to be conformed in this image, you're going to have to sacrifice yourself. Through that sacrifice, you begin to understand the framework of Yahuwah. And you will see before, which y'all will conclude on tomorrow, that it was Yahushua's ability to conform himself to the word is what's allowed him to sacrifice himself to manifest those attributes and components of Yahuwah towards man. And that's what a man should be manifesting to his household. Now you conform to that image. When you conform to that image, then why wouldn't your woman follow you? At that point, then you know that this woman is wicked. There ain't nothing you can do about that. But if you know you haven't conformed to that image, then you don't know why this woman may not be hearkening unto you. It just might be you. You don't have a fair determination to determine that this is a wicked, rebellious woman. Nevertheless, verse 4 of Jeremiah chapter 18. The vessel that he made of clay was marred in the hand of the potter, so he made it again another vessel, as it seemed good to the potter to make it. So he said he made it again, when that word is shuv, of course, which is to return or to turn back, to come back. And the word of Yahuwah came to me, O house of Yasharal, can I not do with you as this potter, saith Yahuwah? Behold, as the clay is in the potter's hand, so are you in my hand, O house of Yasharal. He said, I can't do with you like I do with this potter, like the potter did. So I can't change. We just read he gave you power to become the sons of Elohim. 1 Corinthians 15. And all that comes down to the ability. If you don't have the ability to become a servant to serve Yahuwah, then you wouldn't have the ability to become a servant as being a husband to serve your household. You wouldn't have the ability to do that because you wouldn't be thinking in that frame of mind. You would be thinking on, oh, they on their own. They should just know. Yahuwah never came to us and said that we should just know. He came down on that mount and instructed us himself. Then he had Moses give you the rest. But them 10, he came down and gave you that himself. And you said, Moses, you talk to us. We don't want to talk to him no more. That's what he chose to do. And then he took it a step further and came down in the flesh and said, I'll teach you myself what I want you to do. That's the only way. Because to truly teach the word is to see, a lot of people want to teach the word because they want the fame and the adulation, but it's a servant job. It is a servant job, what it is. So when you look at when you become a husband, it's a servant job. Because the job, yeah, you the head, you make the decisions, you call the plays, you direct the house. But in order to be the coach, you have to be able to teach the team. You have to be able to put the team in positions to succeed. Because if you put the team in, if Yahuwah put us, remember what he said, right? He said, even in temptation, he make it out. Who is not going to put you in a situation where you fail because it will destroy morale. Once morale is destroyed, there's not an inkling and a desire to play for the coach. I don't want to do anything for you. I don't want to execute this game plan because I don't believe we're going to win. Then you have to take that into account. See, Yahuwah knew what he was doing. He said, I know the frame of work of man, he even does. So I'm going to manifest myself in the flesh. And I'm going to show you how to do it. And not only am I going to show you how to do it with my actions, because he said, if you don't believe me for my work's sake, then believe me for the word. He said, then on top of that, I'm going to offer myself as a sacrifice to redeem you from your sins. And since much was given to me to having rule and dominion over the whole earth, heavens, and everything under the earth, then I'm going to turn around and I'm going to give it to you. And I'm going to put you in positions and situations and circumstances where you can do the work for me and be an aid and a help and relief to me, so to speak, to further the vision that I taught you and that you won't fail as long as you stick to the script. No pun intended. You know what I'm saying? Straight up and down. How long did he teach his apostles? You know how long he sat there and taught them after his resurrection? Who know how long Yahushua taught his apostles after his resurrection? Because even after his resurrection, he didn't slide. He sat around and talked. Say exact number of days. Who know how many days the Lord sat and taught his apostles before he went back to heaven? Does anybody know? It's about to hit a minute 1 hour and 57 minutes. 2, 1. So y'all got 60 seconds. Who can answer that question? How many days did the Lord sit down and teach his apostles before he went back to heaven? Because even still, even after, because remember, he went around and he taught them for 3.5 years, 40 days. So he just didn't sit down and say, oh, shoot, nigga, y'all know what it is. Correct. 40 days training. Correct. You know what I'm saying? He was like this here, like, he's still, I got to, because I got something for y'all to do. And even still, he took it a step further. And he said, the Ruach will come and do what? Teach all things that I said unto you. Because I got to make sure you know what it is. I can't send you out here on your own winging it, because that's detrimental to you. That's not detrimental to me. That's going to be detrimental to you. And it's going to be detrimental to him to a certain extent, because it will cause his name to be besmirched. He didn't take the time to instruct them in that information. Acts chapter 1 for those who want to see that on the page with us. But it was 40 days. It was 40 days. Acts 1 and 1. Forming treaties I have made, O Theophilus, of all that Yahushua began to do and teach, until the day in which he was taken up, after he through the Ruach HaKodesh had given commandments unto the apostles whom he had chosen, to whom also he showed himself alive after his passion by many infallible proofs, being seen of them 40 days, and speaking of the things pertaining to the kingdom of Elohim. Now, who can recall why it was 40 days? It's been a while since we've had this conversation. Now, it wasn't because of the flood. Who can recall why, according to Torah, it was 40 days? We're at 15 seconds. You got 45 seconds. Who can recall why it was 40 days from the time of his resurrection to his departure? You have 25 seconds. $15 seconds. Because of Moses? No, not because 5 seconds. When we were in the wilderness, not because of that. 3 seconds. Let's take a trip over here to the book of Leviticus. And this will coincide with what we got in what you call it? While I'm going up. 1 Corinthians 15. Leviticus chapter 12 and verse 1. Yahuwah spake unto, this is Leviticus 12 and 1. Yahuwah spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the sons of Yasharal, saying, If a woman have conceived seed and born a man child, then she shall be unclean 7 days according to the days of separation for her infirmity, shall she be unclean. And in the 8th day of the flesh of his foreskin shall be circumcised. Then she shall then continue in the blood of her purifying 3 and 30 days, and she shall touch no hollow thing, nor come into the sanctuary until the days of her purifying be fulfilled. So remember, he done rose from the dead, or technically he's been born again, correct? So he can't slide. Remember where he said he went into the Kadash tabernacle to do what? To make intercession on our behalf, correct? He can't slide in there in that state. He had to wait. Can't go into the sanctuary. What does that tell us? When you born, what technically would you be? You'd be unclean. You know what I'm saying? So you can't come into the tabernacle. When I say being born in this aspect, because why you have to be born again? Because flesh can't inherit the kingdom of Elohim. You can't come in that place like that. Not in a defiled state. 1 Corinthians chapter 15. So that's why he waited 40 days and pertaining to that. But he still had to give them the instructions, because I didn't read all the verses, but he told them wait for the promise. He said, John baptized with water, you can baptize with the Ruach. Then you can go out and make it do what it do. But until then, you can't really do too much of nothing. But the point of the matter is that he taught them before his departure. You know what I'm saying? You have to sit back and do that. You know what I'm saying? If you want that woman to execute, then she has to be instructed. Yahuwah wanted Yahushua's apostles to execute. So he had them instructed. He gave them commandments pertaining to the kingdom. He just ain't resurrected from the dead. All right, boys, I showed you the whole book about me. I'm out. He didn't do that. He took the time to instruct them on what it was that they needed to do. So when we look at as a man dwelling with her according to knowledge, you have to have the ability to serve, and that ability is to instruct. And that ability to instruct, then guess what? Because if you have the ability to instruct her according to the word, then you've taken the time to learn the word. So therefore, that mercy and that graciousness and that long suffering and the gentleness and the goodness and all of those things that are a part of that, and understanding and knowing her frame, but giving the reverence and respect due to the woman because she's the weaker vessel, then you dwell with her accordingly and you serve her accordingly. And then your prayers are not blocked. Because he said your prayers would be hindered if you do not do that. And that is important. Because at the end of the day, our treatment of our spouses, it could be contingent on Yahuwah hearkens to what you're asking him for. But a lot of brothers in the way ain't really told that. They told, they can want rough skin again and take it back to what we discussed in 2 Samuel 23, verse 1 briefly, that he that rule amongst men must be just. So we have to understand that framework of being just. When you understand that framework of being just or being righteous, then you can be able to rule accordingly. 1 Corinthians 15. Verse 36, I guess. Just something to consider. Because, of course, we know this is how Yahuwah dwelt with us. Whether we look at it in the wilderness or whether we look at it with his son being manifested in the flesh. This is how he dwelt with us. That is our example. You fool. That which you sow is not quickened except it die. And that which you sow not that the body that shall be, but bear grain. It may be a chance of wheat or some other grain. Elohim give it a body as it pleased him, and to every seed his own body. And that's what we just seen in Jeremiah 18 with the potter. He said, you in my hand. He said he made another vessel of clay as it seemed good to him. Remember, he said he made man upright. And we read he made man from the dust of the ground in Genesis chapter 2. And then he turned around and said, you know what? I'm going to make man again as it seemed good to me. And he decided this time to make you an incorruptible seed. So in order to be made of that incorruptible seed and conform to that image, you have to sacrifice yourself. And once you sacrifice yourself, you conform yourself to the mind of the Creator. Like we just read in Proverbs 23 about that whore. What he told his son to do before he told him about that whore, you remember what he told his son to do about that whore? He said, my son, give me your heart and let your eyes observe my ways. So when you look at as a man, you have to give to your father. You got to give to Yahushua your heart and observe his ways. This is how you begin to be conformed. Because at the end of the day, if you're not doing that, what are you going to teach your son? What you going to teach him? Like I told y'all last week with the brother, and shout out to Brother Fillmore out there, baby. When he was talking about his son, about how his son was ardent, about, oh, no. This little child does this, that, there, and the third. You know what I'm saying? The opportunity that your son never has to unlearn a lie. Your son never has to unlearn any of that. Any of the things that you had to unlearn and all the things that you had to wrestle with and deal with. And you know that. Why would you put him at the same disadvantage that you were in because you're too lazy? Because you're too selfish to serve? Because you don't want to do your job? Because you thought your job ended with just providing. Your job does not end with that. Your job doesn't even begin with that. That's really just a small portion. Because the book tell you whether it's a poor man, the book tell you that those who are rich in faith are greater than those who are rich in material gain. That doesn't mean to be like her both Bruce, be a bummer, be a lazy, no good pastor, but you have to understand what your first duty and responsibility was. Abraham was rich in many cattle, and he said, I know him. He teaches household justice and judgment and the way of Yahuwah. So that means a man was willing to serve his household and to make sure that they knew what was right and how to judge and discern between what is right and what is wrong, and that they would know the set apart way and walk in it. That they would know it. But you have to look at that. What you gonna teach them? Because at the end of the day, a lot of time is wasted in doing other things that could be taken in the instruction of your offspring. Because at the end of the day, that's your responsibility. You created them. That's why I tell you that, y'all, see, we look at the schoolhouse. Man, both of them white folks teaching them children in that school. That junk ain't hitting on nothing. If you think that's education, you need to be sitting in the classroom with them because you got the mental level of the people in them elementary school children. You got as smart as them. I don't care if they're in high school, college, or any of that. All that junk don't amount to anything in regards to the thing that a man is supposed to be instructing his son about life. That's why we picked that Proverbs 23. He's telling his son, watch out for them hoes now. They increase transgressions amongst men. So how would you be able to teach your son that if you ain't even taking the time, as Solomon stated in Ecclesiastes, to apply your mind to wisdom, that you might know what's good, evil, and folly? How you gonna be able to do that? It's more than teaching them how to count. It's more than teaching them alphabets. How, if you're not a man of wisdom and understanding, how is your son gonna be one? That means you have to apply yourself to that. If you're not a merciful man, how do you expect your son to be one? If you're not a patient man, how do you expect your son to be one? You have to look at that. If you're an angry man, the book tells you don't dwell with an angry man unless you be staying in his ways and be just like him. So that means that there has to be a development in taking it and a level of understanding and a desire. Remember, he said, with all, seek wisdom. It's far above rubies. And nothing that can be attained can be compared to it, because wisdom shows you what to do and when to do it and what not to do. That's valuable. You can't put no price on that. Understanding gives you the insight and comprehension of situations and circumstances. You can't put no price on that. That's invaluable. That's why people scarred now, because that's why I mentioned that before. You got grandparents, you're 37, 38 years old. What level of wisdom and understanding are being imparted from the grandparent to the grandchildren? Absolutely none. Because this nigga's still a child themselves. And you wonder why our people are all out of whack. Because people too young to hold anybody accountable, because ain't nobody holding them accountable. So they could care less. So the children suffer. I done told y'all that several times, man. If it's certain stuff you want out there, you don't care about the children, you're a selfish bastard. And you ought not have sexual intercourse if you're not concerned with the children. You're rotten, no good bastard. And you sit back and you talk about a world you don't like, and the only thing that you can control is how you instruct and guide your children so they don't fall prey to it. And if that doesn't concern you, what does that say about you? Nevertheless, let's continue. Because what we're going to finish in Philippians will be the main crux of what I just stated. But let's continue. Verse 39, all flesh is not the same flesh, but there's one kind of flesh of men, another flesh of beasts, another of fishes, another birds. Also celestial bodies, bodies terrestrial. The esteem of celestial is one, the esteem of terrestrial is another. There's one esteem, the sun, another esteem of the moon, another esteem of the stars, for one star different from another star in esteem. So also is the resurrection of the dead. It is sown in corruption. The first vessel of potter that the potter made. It is raised in incorruption. The vessel that the potter made that seemed good unto him. It is sown in dishonor, it is raised in esteem. It is sown in weakness, it is raised in power. It is sown in natural body, it is raised in spiritual body. There's a natural body, and there's a spiritual body. And so it is written. The first man, Adam, was made a living soul. The last Adam was made a quickening ruach. Howbeit that was not first which is spiritual, but that which is natural. And after that which is spiritual. The first man is of the earth, earthy. The second man is of the Lord from heaven. This is what he did. Let me make him in a similitude look like me. Remember, because he said, let us make man in our image. He made man in his image. He seen it was good. He said, male and female created he them. So the woman was made in the likeness of the man, in the form of the man. That goes into, that's why he's supposed to instruct her. She made in your likeness. Yahuwah made you in his likeness. That's why he instructed you. He expected you to turn around and do the same for the one made in your likeness. To continue the pattern of which is in heaven. Because at the end of the day, we're supposed to be modeling ourselves after which is in heaven. You know what I'm saying? But a lot of the stuff that I'm mentioning, is it the young men's fault that they're not aware of these things, that they don't know these things? No, nobody taught them. How could they talk? How could they be taught that? The mothers and their fathers made bad choices and decisions because their mothers and fathers 9 times out of 10 didn't teach them anything. And for the most part, because we know that none of our generations of our families were raised in the way of Yahuwah, then of course we were all privy to be open to all the foibles, destructions, and misguidance that sin has to offer. So you have to get past that about what your parents knew or didn't know. Because if your parents didn't know Yahuwah, then of course they failed you. Get over it and let it go. You're grown now. Some of you have too. There's no need to dwell on that fact. You know what I'm saying? They didn't know it. Oh well. Yahuwah still, like we was mentioning a few weeks ago, he still saw fit to manifest himself to you, that he might separate you unto himself, that you could be his. So give thanks and praise to Yahuwah just for that alone. I remember somebody, we used to have the conversation. I was like, yeah, I was born on an unclean bed. They were like, all this stuff. I'm like, look here, man. At the end of the day, you could be born on a clean bed. If Yahuwah doesn't draw you and give you the opportunity to understand, to know him, then you're doomed. So just on the fact of that, for whatever reason known to Yahuwah, because he needs no reason, because he's merciful and he shows grace and compassion when he wills, how he wills, wherever he wills. You know what I'm saying? That when that is extended, you have to take advantage of that. You have to take advantage of that. Ain't no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So let's give thanks and praise to Yahuwah and name of Yahushua for just on that alone. There's many things that esteem and thanks could redound to the name of Elohim, but just on that one alone, for the sake of this conversation, for the opportunity to offer yourself as a sacrifice and humble yourself and become in the fashion of a servant and be humbled under death so that your name could be exalted, because Yahushua stated, whosoever honor me, my Father will honor him also. So just on the fact that, and that goes back to why he told you to give honor unto the wife as the weaker vessel, because Yahushua being the stronger vessel is showing honor unto you because you submitted yourself unto him because he dwelleth with you according to knowledge. So he said, when you sacrifice yourself, I'll extend honor to you as well. I'll give you that same respect. So we have to look at that. Yahuwah is not telling us to do anything that he hasn't done to us, his wife. So we would be without excuse. See, these are the nuanced things that we have to take, so we can sit, so you can act, so we can actually begin to walk in the fullness of the Lord. You know what I'm saying? The fullness, the totality, the completion, and that we see to become him. Because at the end of the day, we want to be his cornerstones, and we'll focus out on the cornerstone on tomorrow as well. Polished after the similitude of this palace. Now he was talking about that's what he said about the daughters. He said polished. We could take that and we could look at that as the seven synagogues. But that's another conversation as well. 7 daughters polished after the similitude of a palace, made in the form and construction of the temple, formed and fashioned in the image of Yahushua HaMashiach to the esteem of Abba in heaven. That's what we have to be after. Because when this man does that, then he can lead his wife in that fashion, and then she will conform prayerfully. And then prayerfully, the children will as well. And Yahuwah's esteemed all the way around the board. Back to Philippians 2. Philippians 2, stop in verse 11. Wherefore, my beloved, as you was always obeyed, not as in my presence only, but not much more in my absence. Work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. For it is Elohim which work in you, both to will and to do that his good pleasure. Do all things without murmurings and disputings. So that's what we started there for. He said, do everything without complaining, without controversy. And that's how we had to sit back and look at it. So, and when you look at and you submit yourself to your husband, you should do things without complaining and disputing on what he asked you to do. Because that's what got your forefathers, when you look at it on a spiritual level, that's what got them knocked off in the wilderness. Because they were disputing and murmuring against you. Now, why would you turn around and do the same thing? Why would you turn around and do the same thing? Because again, I'm referring to everything that we do in the natural is supposed to be representative of the relationship of Yahuwah towards us. That's it. Everything's supposed to be a reflection of that. We have to learn to understand that. That you may be blameless and harmless, the sons of Elohim, without rebuke, in the midst of a crooked and perverse nation among whom you shine as lights in the world. And let's go back to what I mentioned before. Shine as lights in the world amongst a crooked and perverse people, holding forth the word of life, that I may rejoice in the day of Mashiach, that I have not run in vain, neither labored in vain. Yea, and if I be offered upon the sacrifice and service of your faith, I rejoice and rejoice with you all. For so the same cause also do you joy and rejoice with me. So hallelujah for Yahushua. I appreciate everybody's time this evening. You know, you are willing, we'll pick this up on tomorrow. We'll be at Regency on tomorrow. But again, the key component of what we discussed Wednesday rolling into this evening, which is the ability to sacrifice yourself. This means you have to humble yourself. When you humble yourself, then you'll come in the form and the fashion of a servant. Because at the end of the day, when we see Adam created, he told him to dress and keep that garden, which means that he was formed in the fashion of a servant. And then he created someone to help him in his service. That's what the woman was created for, to be a help, an aid, and a relief to this man in his service. His service was to serve Yahuwah because he told him to dress and keep the garden of which Yahuwah created. That's what you have to look at. You look at Yahushua, he was manifested, he humbled himself as a servant, and he gave him an aid and a help and relief in the form of his apostles to help him in his service to his Father, who sent him to serve the very people whom he created, who knew him not and rejected him when he came. Why was he rejected? Because he seen that I made a vessel out of this clay, and this potter decided that I will make a vessel better than that, to show the sons of Yasharal that you are the same as this clay in my hand, that I can remake you and refashion you. That's why he say, make you a new heart and a new spirit. For why will you die, O house of Yasharal? To be born again, to rededicate your temple. We're not even to rededicate, to consecrate. Let's not even use that term. That's not what it means. To consecrate, to set it apart. And you have to set it apart by destroying it. It had to be built. He built the first temple. It was destroyed because of sin. He rebuilt another. That would be of greater esteem than the first one. The same way with the potter making the second vessel of clay greater than the first one. So when we understand that, we understand that we're made in that likeness, in that image. And we're made in that likeness, in that image. We begin to take on those characteristics. And that's how, it's not the woman's job to be made after the similitude of the house in regards to leading the house. That's not her job. That's not her place. You know what I'm saying? If you want this woman to execute, then you have to instruct her. Because that's what Yahuwah did for his wife to be able to execute. He instructed her. She knew what the plan was. She knew what the vision was. Things were laid out clear and concise on exactly what did he want her to do. That's why he was able to come through swiftly and severely with his level of accountability, because she knew plainly and firmly what they had been instructed. No ambiguity. You know what I'm saying? That doesn't exist. You know what I'm saying? So when that comes, and again, when that comes, if we look at what we read in Psalm Proverbs 23, part my mistake, where he tells his son, give your heart to me and observe my ways. Could you be able to look your son in the face and say, son, give me your heart and observe what I'm going to do. Observe the things that I do. Because these things will cause you to avoid, to be caught up in stupidity. To cause you to not fall victim to folly. That's one of the most important aspects. See, so some of you ask yourself, did your father look in your face and give you information to where you didn't get caught up in those stupid stuff? And if any stupid stuff you got caught up in is because you made a willful decision to do some stupid stuff, even though you know he taught you better than that. You know what I'm saying? Because that's one of the strongest weights and responsibilities that a father has, that you have the ability to give this man wisdom. So that's why a lot of our young men get caught up in stupidity, because ain't nobody ever told them how to avoid it. They don't know what to avoid. They can't peep game. You sure get this nigga football. You sure give him a basket. That don't profit that boy. Because so you can sit him out there and get pimped out for your oppressor's entertainment. And then he gets caught up in a whole manner of system of folly that he is not mentally, emotionally, and spiritually prepared to deal with. We don't consider any of that. When strong words we read come out the mouth of Solomon, he say, my son, give me your heart. Let your eyes observe my ways. For a whore is a deep pitch, and a strange woman is whatever is stated, and she lie in wait to increase the transgressions of men. That's solid game, son. Listen to me. Don't fool with her. You remember what it said in Proverbs 7. He looked out the window. He said he seen the young men void of understanding. He said, I know this adulterous woman. Catch these niggas tonight. You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, everything's all well and good. It's all good to like a television show. It's all good to like a little sports. It's all good to like a little movies. But do you apply yourself under wisdom? What wisdom can you give to your son right now? That's just not some old generic stuff. Because wisdom is skill. What skill can you give him? Yeah, it's all well and good to teach him how to do it, but what skill can you give him to navigate into in life that he doesn't get caught up in deleterious situations? Well then, think about that. But blessings to everybody out there. Man. I appreciate everybody's time. Everything is just for us to consider and to weigh. That's all. You can be like, that nigga's an idiot and a retard, and that's your prerogative and that's your business. You can't say that if it's the word of Yahuwah. because you're gonna go to hell. Because you're going, and why you gonna go to hell? Because there's a way that seems right unto a man, but the end there are the ways of death. You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, the word of Yahuwah is right. It's just, it's exact, and his judgment will be meted in equity and full distribution and retribution on the day of judgment as he sees fit to render it according to the word that he stated from the foundation of the world. You ain't got to like it, but you're going to be checked by it, or you're going to be delivered by it. And that torch rests in your life. I thank Yahuwah for the opportunity to even have an inkling to know his goodness and mercy, much less the opportunity to serve him. And I ain't even talking about in the regards of the dispersing of his word, just the ability to serve him, that everlasting life might be attained. That's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful thing. At the end of the day, that's a beautiful thing. And a lot of people laboring for everlasting life. That's why from time periodically, I always mention y'all to remember what he told you in 1 Corinthians 15 by the mouth of Paul, same thing he told you by the mouth of Prophet Asa and 2 Chronicles chapter 15. Your labor in the Lord ain't in vain. Be strong. There is a reward. You know what I'm talking about? David told you the same thing in Psalms 19. There is a reward. Bump what these niggas talking about. You know what I'm saying? You got to ask yourself, just like CeeLo put on that song the day after, man. You know, you got to ask yourself, is this a place you want to go? You know what I'm saying? And if it ain't, well, hey, the hell you got to go. You know what I'm saying? And the adversary out here pulling tricks and all manner of stunts to make you believe that the Lord ain't coming back. And if you foolish enough to believe it and to get drunk and beat the men's service and the maid servants, well, don't be shocked when he come and he cut you asunder and appoint you your portion with the hypocrites and unbelievers. Because at the end of the day, as we look at it, much is given, much is required. Much has been given to the man, so much is required from you. You have to think about that. If he gave you rule and dominion, then you should know that more is required from you than is required from that woman. If he gave you rule and dominion, much more is required from you. So you got to handle your responsibility. And if you didn't want to handle that responsibility, you should have became a husband and a father. Now it's time as a man to stand up and be cognizant and delight in executing what has been committed to your charge by the right hand of the living Elohim. That's a beautiful thing for him to commit that to your charge. Because you'll be able to manifest his attributes unto women, i.e. your wife, and unto children, i.e. your children or other children. They get to see Yahuwah because of you. Think about that. Think about that. But again, blessings out the house of Yahuwah in the name of Yahushua. I appreciate your time, Yahuwah willing. We'll pick it up on tomorrow and do it again.